Very warm greetings to you as you join us on today's episode of Tax Matters. My name is Olumuyiwa Matuluko. How's have we been? Today we have two eminent guests in the house, and they're going to be looking at the workings of the Nigerian tax system, especially from the perspectives of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. They're going to be talking about the medium-term plan, as it were, the plans that have been put in place to ensure that the FIRS continues to collect what will make us all proud. To my left, I have Mr. Nathan Jamiyal, and he's joined by Mrs. Chiaka Okoye. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's episode of Tax Matters.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Jamiyal, you are the head of the Planning, Reporting and Statistics Department of the FIRS. What exactly do you do?
As the corporate planner of the service, I put together the plan of the service, both medium term and annual. The plan sets forth our objectives, our goals for the year or for the period, and we also monitor and evaluate the implementation of the plan. Apart from that, we also monitor revenue collection and render periodic reports, both to management and to government. Also, in fulfillment of the requirements by the Fiscal Responsibility Commission, by which we are required to also submit revenue collection reports to them. We also monitor the implementation of MIS reporting in the system, so that we have a well-established and well-accomplished system of reporting within the system, management reporting. And we also report extensively to other government agencies. We receive inquiries and we provide a lot of information to these agencies.
Okay. Mrs. Okoye, you are Director, Program Management Office, Non-Tax. What exactly does that mean, and what do you do?
I have responsibility for drawing up the modernization plan, which largely is medium term, and this is also drawn from the medium term plan of the service, which is, like my colleague has stated, Nathan, which he has responsibility to developing. So that's where the synergy between us comes on. So what happens is that from that medium-term plan, we look at the projects or the plan that will deliver, or the programs that will deliver what we are trying to achieve exactly in the medium-term plan, and then develop what we call the modernization plan. So the modernization plan also has the phases, it's being drawn in medium-term plans, like we have the 2012 to 2015. Having developed the modernization plan, I also have the responsibility for implementing the non-tax projects on that plan. Over and above implementing the projects, you're also faced with the responsibility of managing the changes that come out of those projects. Because the whole objective of implementing a project is to come up with another way of doing things, or even a simplified way, or a reformed way of doing things. So that's going to change the pattern of how people have been doing things. As easy as we all think it's okay, the project comes up, the outcome of the project, it's also essential that you manage the people through the transformation from where they were to where the project is taking them to. Okay. And naturally, I provide periodic reports to management as required, and then to PRS as required for them to then send to the statutory bodies that require those information.
Now, this interview is, permit me to say, appropriate at this point in time. The year is still very young. 2013 has just begun. And we want to look at the plans of the service to be able to deliver better service to Nigerians. We understand that the FIRS has a vision 2020, but then for some time now, the federal government has had in place vision 2020. What is the link? What is the link? What are the core elements of the FIRS Vision 2020?
The Vision 2020 has 3 pillars, basically. The first pillar is guaranteeing productivity and well-being of the people. And by this is meant reduction in poverty, exploration of health institutions, enhancing education, and all the things that government needs to do to provide that. Pillar 2 is optimizing sources of economic growth. And here you are talking about production, enhancing production, then enhancing processing and manufacturing, enhancing trade, both domestically and internationally. That's the second pillar. The third pillar is fostering the socio-economic development of the country. And here you are talking about attaining very transparent system of governance, achieving macroeconomic stability, improving patriotism, all those things that we need to do to provide a very conducive atmosphere for the economy to grow. So you can see with all that our own vision in FIRS is linked to all these 3 pillars. First, as a tax authority, our activities are in 3 main areas. We deal with tax legislation, we deal with tax policy, and then tax administration. Our vision is therefore in these 3 areas. Our Vision 2020 in the area of tax policy is to ensure that we improve non-oil tax collection so as to reduce government dependence on oil revenue. So you can say it's tied to one of the pillars. Also, our emphasis is to be on indirect taxation, which is easier to administer and yields more, because it's basically you pay as you drive the service, pay as you consume, sort of. For instance, VAT. So the emphasis is to go on indirect taxation rather than direct taxes. And also to remove multiple taxation. That is by actually streamlining taxes among the various tiers of government so that taxpayers are not subjected to multiple taxation. So that's our focus in the area of tax policy. In the area of tax legislation, we want to see that our legislature is very tax knowledgeable, so that as they make laws, those laws will be for the improvement and the general well-being of the taxpayer, which will also encourage taxpayer to pay. Also, the judiciary itself, which is also part of that implements the laws, our hope is that they'll be expeditious in the trial of cases so that issues don't linger on and on. So that's basically our attention in the area of legislation. Also, we want to see if we can modernize and review some of the existing laws and also introduce new ones. In the area of tax administration, our vision is to ensure that taxpayers pay tax voluntarily, voluntary compliance. That is number one. Number two, we want to see that automation is promoted and taken to a very high level, such that from the comfort of your office or your home, you can pay your taxes. That is another of our visions. We want to also see that our taxpayers are very well informed very well educated, and also assisted to understand the laws and to understand their obligations. That's the area of taxpayer education and enlightenment. In terms of facilities that will help us do administration of taxes, we want to ensure that we have very conducive offices all over the country, very intelligent, e-based offices, and also training institutions. For instance, we have a training academy that we want to establish to provide training not only for our staff, but for tax officers generally in the country and beyond. So that is our area in terms of, emphasis in terms of facilities. In terms of our staff, we want to be sure that we have a crop of well-trained and very confident officers, well-motivated. That's basically our vision.
And if I may add to that, in terms of tax policy, we want to also see us to the point where we have a well-established and efficient channel where taxpayers will effectively contribute to tax policy debates. And we want to also see, I think this is legislation now, on the harmonized handshake between legislation and policy, and also a well knowledgeable and educated legislature, sort of. Even the dispensation of tax cases by the judiciary, an expeditious dispensation of tax cases. With regards to the academy, not only is it, like Nathan mentioned, training tax professionals, we want to also see it to the point where it's accredited to issuing, to awarding diplomas and degrees.
Of course, the year 2020 is still a few years away, and of course, we started some time ago, and we know that maybe along that same line, the FIRS has also decided to take matters in bits. So we understand that you have a medium-term plan, 2012 to 2015. What elements of your vision 2020 have you extracted into the medium-term plan?
Yeah, basically the medium-term plan is to help actualize our vision.
Okay.
So in the area of policy, we set out to develop a national tax policy. And the policy is supposed to address this area that we talked about, issue of multiple taxation, issue of where to put the focus, either on direct or indirect taxation. So these are the areas that the policy tried to achieve, and we hope that since they have been developed now, the next phase is to now disseminate and let people understand and buy into the policy. In the area of legislation, of course, some of the policy will require legislation. So part of our medium-term plan is to ensure that we have such a legislation in place, and also review some of our laws too to make them very relevant, and to support our focus on indirect taxation. For also there, we always have set out to, as we say, we want to have a very knowledgeable legislature. So we need to get programs that will involve members of the legislature and also the general public, our stakeholders, so they can understand issues surrounding taxation. And if they understand them, they will obviously be friends of the system. And we believe that will move the system forward. In the area of tax administration, we want to, of course, our number one concern is to attain as much revenue as possible to enable government to execute its programs, and also to ensure that our taxpayers pay their taxes comfortably. So we want to really encourage the idea of self-assessment. In fact, regulations have been developed already to improve this idea of self-assessment, so that a taxpayer will assess himself based on his income. And that way, it is voluntarily done. So we believe this is going to help in the payment of tax.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service introduces the tax card to make all tax payment easy for you. Just follow these 7 easy steps. Obtain your taxpayer identification number, TIN, for free at any FIRS office. Get your tax card from your bank. Log on to www.firsonline.com, then register to obtain a password and access the payment process pages. Fill your TIN number, tax type you're paying, amount payable, and period of payment. Confirm the entries on your transaction. Then print your e-ticket and present at any FIRS office as an evidence of tax paid. It's that simple. For more information, visit www.firs.gov.ng or any FIRS office close to you. FIRS, it pays to pay your tax.
Viewers will regret to say that this interview will have to continue next episode, next week, because we have a related story to tell you. And that is the story of the Stakeholders Forum organized to review the Nigerian model of double taxation agreements. The event took place at the Lagos Airport Hotel Ikeja on Wednesday, February 20, 2013. And it was held to expose the draft model agreement, or if you like, the exposure draft to stakeholders. It will be recalled that a tax treaty drafting strategy workshop was held in March 2012. Correspondent Christina Pius covered the event.
The acting executive chairman of the FIRS, Alhaji Kabiru Mashi, was represented at the event by Mr. Osi Chuke.
It is hoped that the outcome of the deliberations today will lead to a final document which will not only stand the test of time, but also enhance the ability of our country to attract and retain foreign investment, while enabling Nigerian companies doing business in the countries of treaty partners to enjoy the benefits of tax treaties that Nigeria signs with these countries.
Mr. M.S.C.D.K., Director Tax Policy, took participants through the process of tax treaty negotiation, while the Deputy Director Tax Policy looked at changes in the Nigerian Model Tax Treaty.
Because people move from one jurisdiction to the other, they will have to be faced with the laws of the respective countries. But then at the end of the day, they may not be resident in the other country where they operate. And so the issue with them be, yes, you still come back and you have to still account to your government for your activities, but they have paid tax in the other country.
This document is not a document of FIRS. It is a Nigerian document that we are preparing. And that is why it is important we involve all of us who are going to make use of this document or who will be affected by the way this document is used. Now, if the Nigerian tax treaties that we have are very few. As of today, we have 10 tax treaties. And if you look at the content of about 8 of them are very, very similar. They are what we inherited as part of our Commonwealth heritage. We used to be under the British Empire. And so that dictated everything we did. I think it was only the South African and the Chinese tax treaty that are a little bit different from all the other ones. And we have not actually had a forum like this to ask ourselves as a country, how do we want our tax treaties to be? Now, when we talk about models, each country has its own model. And what is a model? Model is the starting point for negotiation. And the common ones, like we had in the last paper, are UN and OECD. And when you see any country that has said, this is my model, whether it's the US, whether it is the Caribbean countries, whatever, usually it's an amalgamation of the contents, the provisions in the UN model and the OECD. In some instances, we have some peculiar provisions that we believe are very important to us, particularly when we get to the definition of PE. There are some, and also in business profits, there are some articles there, some provisions in the articles that are specifically meant for us. Now, why are we doing these changes? Why is it important for us? Number one, we said there are changes in domestic tax environment. Some years back, we never hear anything about national tax policy. As of today, we have a national tax policy, which is driving our tax law and our tax practice across board. And there are provisions that we need to accommodate in our tax treaties that are going to be stemming from that national tax policy. Our tax laws are evolving, they are changing. As of now, the government is working on rewriting all our tax law in simple language. We are working on having brand new Tax Administration Act, having brand new Income Tax Act, and we are changing a lot of things. And once we do these changes, there are quite a lot of things that are missing in our tax law. For instance, a lot of definitions, quite a lot of things. And we are bringing all this into the domestic law in the reviews that we are going. And once we do that, definitely we must also have a reflection of some of these important concepts in our tax treaties.
Thereafter followed an interactive session, during which the provisions of the draft model tax treaty were critically examined.
The word company is missing.
The first one is including an article on e-commerce. I realized that is missing. I don't know why we did that. I think it's time for Nigeria to start sharing from that pie. So I want to talk about the use of the word sales outlet. I think that also has to be clearly defined.
In treating drafting, it is very rare to refer to company. And particularly in the definition of PE, we refer to enterprises. So when you look at the definition, it says a fixed place of business through which the business of the enterprise is carried out. So the enterprise there represents everybody, whether it's an individual or is a company. Missing of an article on e-commerce. I will admit that this is true. And I will also venture to say it because the whole world itself is in a dilemma as to how to tax e-commerce. I'm sure many of us now are patrons of e-commerce. You sit down in the corner of your room, take your iPad or your smartphone, and then you buy your ticket, you use your card, you pay. In the same way, you can go into the database of eBay or any of the platforms and buy things. It's a problem because the world had not been able to agree a framework.
Tax Matters sought further clarification on the need for the workshop and the rationale for double tax treaty.
The review has become necessary in order to align the treaty with our laws and to take advantage of developments in the area of treaty negotiation around the world and internationally, just to be sure that we're up to date, not just in terms of our domestic laws that will enable whatever treaty we have to be operable, but we'll be sure also that we take advantage of developments in the area internationally to make sure that we are getting all the advantages that also accrue to other treaty parties.
What happens after this?
Of course, at the end of this, we collect all the ideas, sieve them, which ones will add value to the draft we already have, and then update accordingly the drafts we exposed today. And then we'll go on for validation.
Thank you, Christina. It all goes to show that the FIRS is indeed a modern organization that places high premium on planning. It is said that anyone who fails to plan, plans to fail. Surely, when it comes to double taxation agreements, a new dawn is here. We want to thank you most sincerely for watching, and we promise that next week, Mr. Nathan Jamiyal and Mrs. Okoye will be here to look at the achievements of the FIRS in the year 2012 within the context of the medium-term plan 2012 to 2015 and the FIRS's own Vision 2020. Be sure not to miss it. We thank you most sincerely for watching, and we enjoin you to plan before you take action. Have a blessed week ahead.